The Seattle skyline used to be my compass, a glittering map of ambition and achievement. At 48, I was the CFO of a tech startup that was less a company and more a rocket ship, soaring towards an IPO that promised to change everything. My life felt like a meticulously crafted spreadsheet, orderly, predictable, and successful. But beneath the polished veneer, a gnawing emptiness echoed from a recent divorce, leaving me adrift in a sea of high-stakes venture capital meetings and empty nights in my sleek downtown condo. I was a king in my castle, but it was a lonely reign. Then Chloe walked in, a hurricane in a tailored suit, and for the first time in a long time, the numbers in my life seemed to blur into something vibrant and alive. She was a PR consultant, 10 years my junior, with eyes that sparkled like fresh champagne and a laugh that could disarm a hostile investor. Our connection was instant, a jolt of recognition in a world of calculated moves. She saw past the CFO title, or so I believed. She saw Marcus, the man who sometimes doubted himself, who carried the weight of a company on his shoulders, and who, underneath it all, desperately craved genuine connection. We fell into a whirlwind romance, late-night dinners stretching into dawn, weekends exploring the Olympic Peninsula, her hand intertwined with mine. She had an uncanny ability to listen, truly listen, absorbing every word, every nuance of my anxieties and triumphs. I found myself confiding in her things I'd never dared utter aloud. The company's internal struggles, the backroom politics that threatened to derail our biggest deals, my own deep-seated insecurities about the impending promotion, the golden parachute that was almost within reach, and the sensitive financial projections that kept me awake at night. She'd nod, her expression earnest, sometimes reaching across the table to squeeze my hand, whispering, "You've got this, Marcus. I believe in you." Her phone was always nearby, often casually face down on the table. Occasionally her fingers would tap away. She'd tell me it was her daily journal app, just jotting down thoughts, recording voice memos for ideas. I didn't question it. Why would I? I was falling in love, believing I'd found a sanctuary in her, a place where vulnerability wasn't a weakness but a shared intimacy. I remember one particularly late night, the city lights painting our bedroom in hues of violet and gold, a rare moment of stillness after a brutal week of negotiations. I lay beside her, tracing the line of her jaw, the weight of the company's future heavy on my chest. I confessed my fears about an upcoming investor presentation, how one wrong word could sink months of work, how the board was pressuring me to fudge a few projections to make the numbers look even better. I told her about the internal battle I was fighting, the ethical tightrope walk. She held me close, her voice a soothing balm, telling me, "It's okay to feel overwhelmed, Marcus. You're human. Just remember who you are and what you stand for." Her words felt like an anchor in a storm, a reaffirmation of my own integrity, echoed by the woman I was coming to adore. The thought that any of this could be anything but pure, genuine understanding never once crossed my mind. My world, once grayscale, was now bursting with color, and Chloe was the artist. I felt a profound sense of hope, a belief that my life was finally aligning, professionally and personally. The closer we got to the IPO, the more intense my life became, and the more I leaned on Chloe. She was my sounding board, my confidant, the only person who seemed to truly understand the immense pressure I was under. I spoke to her about everything. The infighting on the board, particularly my growing friction with David, our COO, whose aggressive tactics often bordered on reckless. I confided how David's short-sighted schemes, while sometimes effective, were creating significant internal dissent and jeopardizing our long-term stability. I shared specific details about our discussions, my frustrations, even a private conversation where David had mockingly called me the ethical police, a comment that stung deeply. Chloe would listen intently, her brow furrowed in concern, her subtle nods encouraging me to delve deeper, to unload the burden I carried. I remember another evening. We were at her place, a chic loft with exposed brick and panoramic views of the bay. The aroma of jasmine tea filled the air. I was pacing, agitated, recounting a heated argument with the CEO about some dubious accounting practices he was pushing to inflate our pre-IPO valuation. I was livid, telling her how I'd threatened to resign if he went through with it, how I felt compromised, and how scared I was of losing everything I'd worked for. My voice, usually calm and measured, was strained with emotion. She sat on the sofa, her phone in her hand, scrolling through what she called design ideas for a new client. But her gaze was fixed on me, intense and unwavering. She offered advice, always so practical, so validating, suggesting ways to navigate the corporate minefield without compromising my integrity. She said something like, "Marcus, sometimes you have to play the game, but never lose sight of your principles. You're too smart to let them box you in." I believed her. Her insights felt genuinely supportive, designed to empower me. There were moments, fleeting perhaps, where a flicker of unease would cross my mind. A slightly too eager question about a specific investor, a subtle shift in her expression when I mentioned a competitor's strategy, a lingering presence of her phone during our most intimate conversations. But these doubts were like faint whispers, quickly drowned out by the roaring symphony of our romance. I was so starved for affection, for genuine connection after the loneliness of my divorce, that I dismissed any red flags as my own lingering paranoia. Chloe was too perfect, too understanding, too fiercely loyal to me. She made me feel strong, brilliant, and desired. She would often tell me how she admired my unwavering moral compass, how rare it was to find someone like me in the cutthroat tech world. And I, like a fool, drank it all in, believing every word, letting my guard down completely. My promotion to senior CFO was imminent, practically a done deal, contingent only on the successful navigation of this final board meeting before the IPO announcement. My career was poised to skyrocket, a testament to years of tireless work. I felt a renewed sense of purpose, not just for myself, but for the future I envisioned with Chloe. We talked about buying a house, perhaps in the San Juan Islands, a retreat from the city's relentless pace. She'd smile, her eyes sparkling, tracing patterns on my arm, making me believe in a future that felt both ambitious and deeply personal. I was at the peak of my professional life, and in my personal life, I felt like I was finally rebuilding something real, something profound. I never imagined that the very person I trusted with my deepest fears was meticulously assembling the tools to dismantle it all. The week leading up to the critical board meeting was a blur of frantic preparations. Endless financial models, investor presentations refined to the syllable, late-night calls with lawyers. My nerves were frayed, stretched thin like a guitar string tuned too high. This was it, the culmination of years of relentless effort, the final hurdle before the IPO, the official stamp on my golden parachute. Chloe was busier too, she said, working on a major consulting project that required her full attention. She was slightly more distant, her phone a constant companion, her conversations hushed and frequent. When I asked about her new client, she'd give vague answers, chalking it up to NDAs and competitive secrecy. I thought little of it, attributing her intensity to her own ambition, something I admired. We were both chasing our dreams, weren't we? The day before the meeting, I met her for coffee. I was a bundle of raw nerves, pacing outside the CAF before she arrived. When she did, she looked radiant, but also preoccupied, her eyes flickering constantly towards her phone. I tried to share my anxieties, my stomach tied in knots over the potential pitfalls of the meeting, the ruthless interrogations I expected from the board, especially from some of the more skeptical members. I recounted details of a particularly heated phone call I'd had with our CEO, venting my frustrations about his reluctance to fully disclose certain risks to potential investors, risking what I perceived as future SEC violations. I remember saying something desperate, something like, "If this goes sideways, Marcus, you're the fall guy." And frankly, a part of me just wants to walk away, burn it all down, and start over. It was a moment of profound vulnerability, an emotional outburst born of pure stress and ethical conflict. She simply nodded, sipping her latte. Then her phone buzzed, and she was off, apologizing, saying she had a crucial call with her new client. A cold knot formed in my stomach then, a fleeting sense of being dismissed, but I quickly rationalized it away. She had her own career. She was busy. We were a team, supporting each other's success. That night, I barely slept. The weight of expectation, the future of the company, and my own career hung heavy in the air. I kept replaying my conversation with Chloe, the casualness with which she took my deepest fears. A tiny, insidious seed of doubt had been planted, but I crushed it, burying it under layers of trust and affection. I woke up feeling resolute, ready to face the music, ready to claim my rightful place. I donned my sharpest suit, practiced my opening remarks in the mirror, and drove to the office, the Seattle morning sun glinting off the Space Needle, a beacon of progress and opportunity. The board meeting room, on the top floor, offered a panoramic view of the city. I looked out, taking a deep breath, feeling a surge of confidence. This was my moment. The meeting began with the usual pleasantries, followed by a review of the company's performance. I presented my financial projections with precision and conviction, answering questions with the clarity born of deep understanding. I felt strong, in control, the golden parachute fluttering gently within my grasp. Then, about an hour in, the mood in the room shifted. David, the COO, cleared his throat, a sly smirk playing on his lips, and looked at the CEO. "Gentlemen, I think there's something else we need to address before we proceed with Marcus's final confirmation." My blood ran cold. A board member on the far end of the table tapped on his tablet, and the air crackled with anticipation. A voice then filled the room, amplified and distorted, yet unmistakably mine. It was fragmented, disjointed, pieced together with chilling precision. "Fudge a few projections, ethical tightrope walk." Then, David's short-sighted schemes, creating significant internal dissent, the ethical police. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. The words came faster, more damning. "Threatened to resign, scared of losing everything. If this goes sideways, Marcus, you're the fall guy. A part of me just wants to walk away, burn it all down, and start over." The room was silent, save for the horrifying echoes of my own voice, twisted and weaponized. My most vulnerable confessions, ripped from their context, stripped of their emotional truth, now sounded like reckless insubordination, disloyalty, a complete disregard for the company's future. I saw the faces of the board members, their expressions shifting from confusion to shock, then to outrage. The CEO's face was a mask of furious disappointment. The clip stopped. The silence that followed was deafening, suffocating. I felt a wave of nausea, my knees threatening to buckle. I looked around, desperate for an explanation, for someone to say this was a cruel joke. No one did. The board chairman, his face grim, cleared his throat. "Marcus, what is the meaning of this?" I tried to speak, but my throat was suddenly dry, my mind a chaotic mess of disbelief and betrayal. Chloe, her phone, the journal app. The realization hit me like a physical blow, a cold, hard truth that shattered every illusion I had built around her. She wasn't just recording her thoughts, she was recording mine. Her ambitious eyes, her careful listening, her new client, a rival firm. It all clicked into place, a monstrous puzzle of manipulation and calculated cruelty. The chairman continued, his voice devoid of warmth. "Given these deeply concerning revelations and the potential for severe SEC violations and reputational damage, we are initiating an immediate internal investigation. You are suspended, effective immediately, Marcus. Please clear out your office." My world imploded. The golden parachute I had so diligently worked for, the career I had so painstakingly built, was not just gone. It was ripped to shreds, smeared with lies and public humiliation. I stumbled out of the boardroom, feeling the weight of their judgment, the sting of betrayal, the bitter taste of utter despair. The city skyline outside, once a symbol of my triumph, now mocked me, a cold, indifferent testament to my spectacular fall. Chloe hadn't just used me as a stepping stone, she had pushed me off a cliff. The days and weeks that followed blurred into a suffocating haze of disbelief and profound shame. My phone, once a constant conduit to the pulse of the tech world, went silent. Colleagues avoided my calls. Former friends offered awkward platitudes, or, worse, outright condemnation. I was a pariah, the man who had supposedly betrayed his company, his name dragged through the mud of whispers and veiled accusations. The legal letters started arriving, heavy with legalese, threatening lawsuits, citing breach of fiduciary duty, corporate espionage. My savings, once a comfortable cushion, began to dwindle under the relentless onslaught of legal fees. I retreated into my condo, the blinds drawn, the world outside a hostile, alien place. The despair was absolute, a cold, heavy blanket that smothered every spark of hope. I replayed every conversation with Chloe, every intimate moment, dissecting her words, her smiles, searching for any sign, any clue I had missed. The truth was a constant, searing pain. She had played me for a fool, meticulously, expertly, and without a shred of remorse. My lawyers, a formidable team, were my only real connection to the outside world. They worked tirelessly, sifting through the wreckage of my career. It was their forensic experts who finally uncovered the irrefutable evidence: digital breadcrumbs, metadata, and IP addresses that traced the anonymous leak directly to a burner phone purchased by a shell company, which, in turn, was linked to Chloe's consulting firm. More damningly, they found a hidden partition on her old laptop, containing an archive of my recorded conversations, neatly categorized and timestamped, some marked with chilling notes like Marcus, IPO ethical dilemma, or Marcus, David conflict. The manipulation wasn't just an act of impulsive betrayal. It was a premeditated, calculated assault on my reputation and career. The discovery, while validating my gut feeling, didn't lessen the pain. It only deepened the sense of violated trust. The initial wave of anger was volcanic, a righteous fury that threatened to consume me. I wanted to expose her, to scream her name from the rooftops, to see her face the same public humiliation she had inflicted upon me. But my lawyers advised caution, focusing on clearing my name rather than engaging in a public mudslinging match that could further complicate my legal standing. It was in those dark, quiet hours, staring at the Seattle skyline that once promised so much, that a new kind of resolve began to stir within me. The despair, though still present, slowly began to give way to a flicker of something else, a cold, hard realization. This wasn't just about Chloe. This was about the insidious underbelly of the corporate world, the ambition that devoured integrity, the ruthless climb that crushed decency. My experience, though devastating, was not unique. How many others have been victims of such machinations? I had spent my entire adult life navigating the intricate maze of the tech industry. I knew its secrets, its unspoken rules, its dark corners. I had been privy to boardrooms where ethics were a footnote, where profit trumped principle. My deep knowledge, once a tool for my corporate ascent, now felt like a burden, a secret I couldn't keep. The thought of leveraging this knowledge, not for personal gain or revenge, but for something greater, began to take root. It was a risky idea, terrifying even, to expose the very world that had built and then broken me. But the alternative, fading into obscurity, a disgraced CFO, felt like a fate worse than any battle. The seed of liberation was planted, a tiny sprout pushing through the scorched earth of my despair. I wouldn't just be Marcus, the CFO who fell. I would be Marcus, the voice who refused to be silenced. The idea, once a whisper, grew into a roar. I started an anonymous blog, using a secure VPN and a pseudonym. The Corporate Confidant. The writing was raw, unvarnished, a cathartic purge of everything I had held inside. I didn't name Chloe. I didn't need to. I didn't name the company. Instead, I detailed the psychological manipulation, the weaponization of trust, the dark arts of corporate espionage. I wrote about the pressure to compromise ethics, the insidious ways power could corrupt, and the vulnerability of human connection in a world driven by profit. I described the chilling precision with which my deepest fears and confessions were twisted against me, how words of love became tools of destruction. It was my story, yes, but it resonated with a universal truth about the fragility of trust and the cutthroat nature of ambition. The initial posts were met with a trickle of comments, then a steady stream. People shared their own stories, tales of betrayal, of corporate ruthlessness. My readership exploded. Soon, national media outlets picked up on the blog, intrigued by the raw honesty and the insider perspective. They wanted interviews, but I maintained my anonymity, letting my words speak for themselves. The narrative of the Corporate Confidant shifted the public conversation from my alleged professional failings to the systemic issues of corporate ethics and the predatory practices of some firms. The blog became a platform, a rallying cry for integrity in an often unscrupulous industry. The attention snowballed, eventually catching the eye of the SEC. They launched an investigation, not into my former company, but into the rival firm Chloe had secretly consulted for unethical practices and corporate sabotage. The irony was palpable. While I was rebuilding my reputation through radical transparency, Chloe's carefully constructed professional persona crumbled in the shadows. The SEC investigation, coupled with whispers about her past dealings and her sudden withdrawal from high-profile projects, led to her quiet but thorough destruction within the industry. She faced no legal charges that I know of, but her professional network evaporated. She became persona non grata, her name synonymous with ruthless opportunism. Justice, it seemed, could be a quiet, insidious thing. I was no longer a CFO, nor did I aspire to be. The blog had opened up new avenues. I was invited to speak at universities, to consult for companies genuinely committed to fostering ethical leadership. I became an advocate, a voice of experience warning others about the dangers of unchecked ambition. My life had taken an unexpected turn, a detour through hell that led to a surprising form of liberation. I had lost everything I thought I wanted, the title, the prestige, the golden parachute, but I had gained something far more valuable: integrity, purpose, and a profound understanding that true value lay not in a job title or a bank balance, but in the unwavering commitment to one's own truth. The healing process was slow, scarred, but genuine, like the slow mending of a broken bone, stronger in its repaired state. I was whole again, but different, forever changed by the fire, refined by the betrayal, and finally, truly free. My apartment still overlooked the Seattle skyline, but it no longer felt like a map of ambition. It was simply a view. The emptiness I once felt had been replaced by a quiet fullness. I found solace in mentoring young professionals, guiding them through the ethical minefields of their careers, sharing my story not as a cautionary tale of despair, but as a testament to resilience. There was a bittersweet ache sometimes, a memory of the life I'd lost, the trust that had been so brutally broken. I still thought of Chloe, not with fury, but with a weary understanding of the destructive power of ambition unbound by conscience. She had taught me the hardest lesson of all, that sometimes the most dangerous predators were the most charming smiles. But the bitterness was overshadowed by gratitude. Gratitude for the second chance, for the opportunity to rebuild my life on a foundation of integrity. My new purpose, as a consultant and advocate for ethical leadership, felt more authentic, more aligned with who I truly was. I traveled less, lived more simply, and found joy in genuine connections, wary but not jaded. The scars remained, a permanent reminder of the price of blind trust, but they no longer defined me. They were a part of my story, a story that had finally found its voice. I was Marcus, and my worth was not dictated by a title, but by the unwavering commitment to my values. It was a quieter life, perhaps, but it was profoundly mine, imbued with a deep sense of peace and an earned wisdom. I had walked through fire, and I had emerged, not unscathed, but undeniably whole, ready to face whatever lay ahead, with my eyes wide open.